It is connecting.
Oh, it warns me.
Yes. Okay, so we should be live on Facebook now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our chat tonight about money mindset. So Christine and I both love talking about the subconscious mindset and all the power behind it, but it can also be a power that is preventing and blocking you from stepping into your full empowerment, just as much as it can be this powerful tool to rewire and gain all the success and wealth and accomplishments and freedom that you can have as well. So we're going to be chatting about that tonight. So thank you all for joining. If you have some questions, please drop them. If we don't get to them during this session, we will definitely get back to you. And then of course, if you do find that you are interested in learning more about doing some subconscious work, energy clearing and all of that, which Christine's going to talk about here just shortly, feel free to just comment, say, I want more information on that. And Christine will message you about setting up a session. She's got a lot of good offers coming up for you all. And then I also have a workshop coming up too. So just dropping that there. Start saying hi, start letting us know that you're joining us and where you're joining us from. And then I'm going to turn it over to Christine. Christine, tell us about you.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be here with you, Izzy. It's very neat to connect this way, especially the way the world has been. It's so nice to be able to actually interact this way. And I'm such an extrovert that I really missed some of this interaction. So yeah, this is such a great opportunity to chat openly about a lot of stuff that's sometimes under wraps for a lot of people. So my background in personal development started 20 years ago. I started using tapping on myself when I was just out of high school. So that tells you how old I am now. And tapping was very profound for me. It helped me with all kinds of stuff, from anxiety to stress to self-image to self-worth issues. And I started developing a toolkit that I started using on friends and family. And I'm like, wow, this is really powerful stuff. I want to share it with as many people as I possibly can. So my mission is to help raise the vibrational frequency of the planet by helping one person at a time manage their own energetic well-being. And so that's what really drives me and motivates me. And the shift into self-worth is such a natural combination with abundance and with money mindset and all of those kinds of things. So that is where the basis of self-worth, value, and a lot of what's happened in our subconscious minds that has negatively affected that without us even knowing it until we really dig deep. So my passion's in personal development. I am also a wife, a mother, and I work in the IT field in corporate America. So got it all there.
Look, yeah, perfect. And definitely, I see this, once you learn this stuff from the practitioner point of view, you start seeing it everywhere and you start being able to understand people too. So when you do your own personal journey, especially when you're learning about subconscious work, it's beautiful because it starts showing up everywhere. So I also work in the corporate world a lot with IT people. So project management, and agile, scrum, safe, all that stuff. And it's really starting to show up more and more as this agile is surfacing in the IT world of let's be flexible, let's be resilient. And a lot of the self-development is being infused in that. And when you see people's resistance start to show up and how people are interacting, you're like, oh, there's some subconscious stuff, some family karma, some things going on with them. And you are able to respond more than react when you can start to recognize these things in yourself and do this self-work too.
Yeah, because everyone's just bringing what they have to the table, right? So if you're sitting at a table with people that are stuck and mired in all of these things, and as you become more aware, it's like, oh my gosh, I used to have guys I'd work with that would make comments and I'm thinking, who told you that? Just where did this come from? How did you program this? And so I got really interested in seeing how well it meshed with the kind of leadership role I'm in now as a technical lead for IT. How can I help my team better understand their own value and their own worth? And that helps with what they're bringing to our team internally, and then what they're bringing to the client as well. So it's like, I can use this passion everywhere.
Yes, yes. And I love that. Yes, because my focus or how I word it, right? We're talking about the same stuff, but how I word it for me, for my understanding is scarcity mindset and abundant mindset. And this fear bases love. And when people are so stuck in scarcity, you see them in this like limited, like this or that, and it can only be one or the other. And versus when we get into abundant mindset, which is when the wealth and the money starts flowing as well, is we're thinking like, I can have it all. Anything is possible. I just have to open up and allow it. But as you mentioned, like you're coming more from this self-worth, which it all ties back to. And that's more of this like heart-centered feeling as well. And a lot of times we start thinking about money and all these things and we're in our head. And when we can really move out of our head and into our body is a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah. Embodying the aspect of self-worth and abundance especially when the subconscious may have been programmed from a very young age to believe or to have been traumatized or to have been exposed to things that it was not mentally and emotionally prepared to handle in an effective way. And so things that might not seem traumatic to you as an adult, looking back on it, 3, 4, 5-year-old you has a trauma embedded from that. And because the subconscious is constantly taking in so much information, it has to distort, filter, and delete that information so it can quickly file and assess, okay, what do I need to do here? How am I going to keep you surviving if something goes wrong? And so it uses those lenses and those filters to take in information currently. And if there's a stuck memory in the matrix, in the subconscious, and that becomes the identity you respond from, you really can't respond with the same amount of capability that you could if that was cleared up.
Yes, perfect, perfect. And so giving this basis for people, now looking specifically at money mindset, right? Like I think most of us, our parents are younger when they had us, and they tend to, and I'm generalizing for the majority of people, of course, this isn't true for everyone, but the majority of us, our parents were younger. Maybe they weren't as established in their careers. They're balancing, the budget of having children and that adjustment. And so we start to hear these certain phrases as a child, like, we don't have the money for that right now, or money doesn't grow on trees. For me, my parents were teenagers when they had me. They were 16. So I heard a ton of this and I saw a ton of it as well. So I personally had a lot of rewiring with the money to work to do. So I'll get into my story in a little bit, but you tell me, what is it that you see are those main money stories that are coming up for people?
There is a whole lot around there's not enough or that you don't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of that, especially when you get into like some more of the like dipping into the heart-centered entrepreneurs. There's a lot of if I didn't have the money to do this when I was younger, how can I expect somebody to pay me? And there's a fundamental shift that has to happen with sometimes memories that don't even seem related. A lot of it too is there any shame or guilt around this? Is there shame or guilt around debt that's been accumulated because of stories that you heard, like you said, growing up? What was on repeat? What I like to say, what ran in the family? They use that with hereditary disease and things like that. What habits ran in the family? What stories? What generational beliefs about wealth or abundance or your ability to earn or be deserving of what you're earning, or even to see opportunities? Were there blinders on in that aspect? Was it, this is the way we've always done it, this is the only way we can survive? And that becomes like, then there's guilt and there's blame and there's shame over the debt side of it. But then there's also guilt and shame that people don't realize till they're coming up against hitting that next level. What if I out earn my parents? What if I do better than my siblings? These kind of things come up because we made these vows and these contracts with our tribe that help us survive. And so when we start to make changes that challenge those vows and things, it can be very difficult for the subconscious to get on board because it's stuck back in this place where, no, we have to be here and we have to stay safe.
Yes. And so I see this a lot too. Like our society sometimes makes this image that if you have a lot of money, you either one had to work extremely hard and make a ton of sacrifices, generally like you're sacrificing time with family in order to have more money, or that if you have a lot of money and it came easy, then you must have done something corrupt. And we can look at certain circumstances and see that that's definitely not true. However, that's a very strong belief that's not only instilled by our family, but our culture and the movies we watch and the, all these like reality TV shows and how media portrays things. But there are many philanthropists that make money and they're paying themselves fairly for their work. And it's allowing them to do more work by making that. Like Mother Teresa was a millionaire. A lot of people don't know. So there's all these people throughout history. They just didn't advertise it, that they were making a lot of money or that they had money. And so we can see those things showing up, or like you said, the patterns. Like for me, one of my parents would spend the money right away. She will constantly go to the dollar store and spend all of her money and then have nothing to show for it. So it's one of those things, like I have to catch myself in those patterns in the past and go, wait a minute, I believe in saving money. Why am I doing this? So we have to catch ourselves in these patterns. So awareness is a huge key. And before we do that subconscious work, right, we need to identify what it is that we don't want to do anymore and what it is that we want to do.
Right. And whether we're directing our motivation as, okay, the motivation is always initially stronger to avoid pain. So let's say that there is this poverty mindset or this experience of poverty. And under that kind of pressure, you can suddenly rebuild your bank account very, very quickly to get by. And then that like high is gone and that dopamine hit is gone. And now it's like, if we want to move towards what we actually want in life, we need to be motivated towards it. And that usually shows up as a smaller motivation along the long-term path, that you stay the course and that you are motivated now intrinsically to move towards pleasure, to move towards what you want without that subconscious programming of, well, this is the way I've always done it. And the pressure does something to me that I like, right? There's that high of that. Sometimes stress is the drug, right? Yeah. I've done that before. You have a paper due and you stay up, you pull an all-nighter, and the procrastination, the stress, and the power of the deadline affect you to change. And it's good in that short term. But when we're talking the long-term game of money mindset, the long haul, if you will, of creating the foundation of a wealth mindset, the foundation of a legacy, because this is going to become generational healing that leads to generational wealth on a grander scale. So that's where that motivation really comes in of like, do I want to move towards what I want? And am I aware? I'm glad you brought awareness up, because that's huge. That's the first step, is like, am I even aware and acknowledging what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, for me, it really happened. I was noticing some patterns and I was slowly improving because I was doing a lot of this work on my own. Because I'd gone through the training and then trying to do the work on myself, which I do recommend, like get someone to do it for you. It will be so much more accelerated than doing it yourself, which you can, but if you want to accelerate, it's amazing. But I was doing this thing where I would sit down and I'd really work on manifesting $10,000. And I was like, okay, here's what I need it for. And I was very clear. And I would get into this like amazing feeling, this like love and abundant feeling. And I would get the $10,000. And then as soon as I would get it, that abundance, I would like disconnect and I would just spend the money on a little bit of what I intended, but not all of it. And then I would end up back at square one. And I just kept doing this cycle. And it was about 3 or 4 times of doing it. I was like, okay, I know I can make the money. It is completely possible, but what in the world is going on with this aftermath? And I finally, I ended up getting with someone and doing this work and accelerating it because I couldn't see what I couldn't see. And then suddenly, I mean, it was like within a month after that, I went from making 30,000 a year to 100,000 a year. And then kept doing the self-work and went from 100 to almost 200. So it was like, oh my gosh. And I wasn't doing anything harder than I was doing before.
Mhm.
I was doing all the same stuff. It was just, I was showing up differently and I wasn't allowing these blocks to really block me. I could say yes to money instead of going, oh, well, no. I saw the worth. I saw what other people were charging, and suddenly it just made sense and things just started clicking.
Yeah. That's a really profound realization too, because that even ties back to like, I've worked with women on weight, for example, too, and the self-worth that ties to, can you take a compliment? Can you, at the very core of who you are, be able to
Yeah.
accept the positive coming in? Are you in the position to receive? And that was a hard thing for me, having to make things happen all of the time and not just being able to relax and receive, because sometimes you go into that survival mindset. I don't know if that sounds similar to yours, but I was in a very survival oriented place for a long time,
Yes.
you know,
For
and
sure. I mean, that's where scarcity mindset comes from, is survival mode. And that's the huge difference. I tell people, to get out of scarcity mindset, there needs to be relaxation. And in order to get into relaxation, there needs to be some healing. There needs to be some transferring into this other state. And so energy clearing, like you were saying, we were talking before, I tell people yoga nidra is a beautiful tool to let yourself relax, or even just doing yoga and having the savasana at the end, meditation. There's plenty of tools, and a lot of them we call energy clearing. But if that's not your thing, then we call it getting ourselves out of stress and into relax, which is like that the glitter jar, where they shake up the glitter jar and everything's all chaotic. We don't need to be in that state all the time. We need to stop and let it settle, so that we can really look at what's there.
yeah, getting out of stress and that whole, like, there is that fight flight response that if you're on low level stress all day long, like we all experience in some way, shape, or form, and you aren't in a position to manage that stress effectively, suddenly you'll notice, well, not suddenly, over time, you'll notice that you become less resourceful. So this landscape of opportunity that's in front of you is now super hyper focused because you're just trying to survive. And so I don't know if you've experienced that. I personally have something that triggers the physical fight or flight in me. I notice I get like tunnel vision, my ears start to ring because it's just focused on how do I get out of here and survive. And so if you're living that day-to-day life, it can be very difficult to, and your subconscious may have you living that pattern because it's safe. It feels safe. That's a neural pathway that's been created so long ago and is yielded obviously safe results because we're still surviving right here. But if all we're doing is surviving, then we haven't learned to effectively manage stress the best way we possibly can.
Yes. And so many people don't even recognize that they are in survival mode
Mhm.
because they've become so accustomed to it that tolerance has built up. And just because your tolerance is built up to stress, right? Because a lot of us have pride. I used to have a lot of pride in how much stress I could handle and keep calm, which a lot of people compliment me on still, but I'm like, it's not a healthy level. I shouldn't be here. um, but we get so adaptive to it, and our body is doing that to protect us. But we are so adapted to it that we don't even recognize the level of stress. And it might come across as like sudden fatigue, suddenly needing to take naps a lot, or just shutting down, or the shallow breathing is happening, or maybe stress eating. There's like all these little subtle triggers that we're not noticing because we're so blind to it all. We
Absolutely.
need someone else to point it out to us.
Right. That's where accumulating different tools too and having different conversations like this, like growing my network on social media to incorporate more of these types of conversations, right, has been so amazing, especially like everyone shifting into this online model. This is where these connections are made that maybe even in real life you may not find these people as easily that are,
Yeah.
common theme, right? Common ideas, common beliefs, striving to make something better, striving to change and break patterns. The pattern breakers, me growing up and in my younger years, they were the minority of the group of people I was around. And so it was like,
Oh,
okay,
yes.
right? Like where do
I
I
was the
fit? Where am I in
weirdo that
this
was
conversation?
like bringing up these topics that were just bizarre. And for me, they were normal, but people were like, she talks about some weird stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Personal development was like bred into me, I think. It's just been part of my life, my whole life. And so I was always the weird kid who was like, if you're upset, why don't you just take some breath and write some affirmations or something?
Yes. Well, for me, like I grew up in a very stressful environment,
Mm.
and I was under a lot of stress as a child, and I didn't know why. I said I had all these urges to cry all the time, and I would sit in my room and I would just sit there, and I didn't know it was meditating, but I was doing meditation and yoga. But I just knew because that's what my body needed, that's what my mind needed. And I remember at one point I got a little older and I realized I hadn't been meditating. Still didn't know that word, but I was just like, I just like going inside me and being inside my head and settling and calming and breathing. And I was, I think in my first year of college, and I came across a magazine and it was like yoga and meditation. And I was just like, what is this? And I was probably like right at 18. Yeah. And I started reading and I'm like, this is what I've been doing. It's called yoga and meditation. And the more I started delving into that, like, and I started doing these practices, I had so much more awareness once I was doing them and going, maybe the life I'm in is not healthy. And I would have never had that awareness. I didn't know that this rest of this world existed. I didn't know other people had different styles of families. I didn't know that like the Hallmark, you know, Christmas traditions, like people actually did that. Like there was like all these little things that I was just like, oh, like making a million, like nowadays I'm like, oh, making $1 million in your business is like actually really easy. Like, but everyone makes it seem like it's so hard, but that's just our environment that we're in. It's just our environment, and our mind is a product of our environment.
Yeah. That's like that 4-minute mile, right? Until someone does it, we are
Yes.
not, yes, like humanity doesn't understand, hey, we can do this. And then once someone does it, it's like they've opened the floodgates and now we can suddenly vibrate into that place, or we can even visualize into that place. And that's where it starts that creative juice flowing. And we start to take action based on that new belief. And it's either a highly emotional imprint that causes immediate action, or it's the repetition. And so once you build the repetition in, it's like, now we've created this whole new neural pathway, we've created this whole new belief, and we start to operate within this new fresh new belief. And it's just a beautiful thing to see people start to flourish that way.
Yes. I love it. I love it. And so with money mindset, things that we really work on. So I'm going to let Christine talk about those individual sessions. Uh, I'll be hosting a workshop where we'll be diving into this a lot deeper and really working and doing some activities on where we got our beliefs from. And there's going to be a lot of journaling exercises. And then there are going to be a recording. So regression so that we heal what happened, and then a rewiring so that we can reprogram our mind to do what we want it to do as far as success, money, and wealth goes for us business people. Christine, how does it work with having the session? I know the sessions, those custom sessions are so much more powerful than the group work, which the group work you still get tons of transformation from, but you can really customize it and dive deep and ask those questions within the custom. How does that work?
So with one-on-one sessions, the really beautiful thing is there are some really deep-seated and deep-rooted things that maybe you don't want to share in a group, or maybe you don't get enough attention on in a certain situation, like even doing my own work. This is why I always have mentors too, always. Because I have blind spots, and that's where I accumulate new tools. That's where I have blind spots. So what I do with subconscious release technique in particular, and it's funny you mentioned what you were doing as a child, not realizing what that was I used to do something similar to subconscious release, and like it was just how I function. If I didn't feel well, I would take a deep breath in and I would imagine a color and I would breathe it out. And subconscious release, we use specific breathing types with release statements. And we get to the bottom of, okay, is this tied to a memory? Are you using And I use your exact phrasing because that's how your subconscious is bringing it up to you. This is the pattern that it's running. For lack of a better term, that's the hamster wheel that's running in the mind. And so in these sessions, we dig deep into, was it a memory? What is and we assess emotions against it, because emotion, right? Energy and motion. I don't know who coined that, but it always pops back into my head.
Yes.
We are meant to feel emotions, and
Me
they are
too.
not. Yeah, right. It's like, it's almost as like E equals MC squared. It's that programmed into me. And I'm sorry, my like screen seems to be freezing. So I'm not trying to talk over you. I just catch it after a second here.
I know I am.
So with the one-on-one session, okay, the universe is like, okay, let's keep moving here. With the one-on-one sessions, we do muscle testing to figure out where the limiting beliefs are, which I think is really cool, because I've always been a big proponent of muscle testing, even for other things like supplements and things of that nature. And so once we find those things that are setting off this cascade of weakening energy, physically, emotionally, and in the energy body, we then clear them. And it's very simple. Simple and easy don't mean the same thing. So it's a very simple process, but when we're digging in, it can be very, very triggering and emotional. And, it helps to have a guide along the way for those things. So, that's really where the one-on-one kind of comes in. And that's what I'm focusing right now with this rebrand into the energy of plenty, the feeling of abundance and the joy that is in that. So yeah, that's that in a nutshell.
Awesome. Very awesome. All right. So we're wrapping up. We want to make sure that everyone gets the chance, the opportunity to reach out. So if you would like to learn more, we both offer consultations. So you can definitely book a free consultation to find out how we can help you, what it would be like, and to really break down any questions and give you some answers. Sometimes it's nice to ask those specific questions, like, will it help me with this? And I have some questions or reluctancy on these areas, and we can really help break down those fears, because your subconscious wants you to stay where you're at. That is what's safe. So if you're like, yeah, that sounds awesome, that sounds amazing, but then for some reason you can't get yourself to actually comment and schedule a consultation, that is a subconscious block coming up for you. I've done that plenty of times where I'm like, I know I need to go to the doctor, right? But for some reason, you can't find the time to sit and schedule your doctor's appointment. Those are blocks in preventing you from getting better. And I know that sounds kind of bizarre sometimes, but also simple at the same time. The mind is a powerful thing. And hypnosis and hypnotherapy and these subconscious rewirings, these have been around for a while, but science is really showing now how easy it is to rewire the mind. And we have this powerful tool. Let's use it. Let's make our lives better, and let's make our lives better quickly by rapidly changing our lives in a session with a mentor. And sometimes it does take a couple sessions, but you can still get amazing results from one session too. So we offer you to experiment, have an open mind, an open heart, and just to be welcoming to change, welcoming to having more, to having a better life.
Absolutely. That's what it's about.
All right. So if you want more information, comment below. Christine's going to post her information under this link too, so that you can check out her pages, her group, and have her contact information. And then of course I will as well. And we hope that you can join us again. I'm sure I'll have Christine back another time. We can talk about so many topics with the subconscious mind. Today we were just talking specifically on money, but of course, again, we can go off on so many things. Once you understand how the mind works, it's amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
I tend to go off in those places automatically.
Me too. I'll be like at the grocery store and I'll start talking to somebody about it. And I'm like, oh, but yes.
Awesome.
So yes. So please join our groups so you can stay in touch and get lots of value, and schedule an appointment if you can. Of course you can. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.